Hello, thanks for watching this session. Today I'm looking at application customizers for the new SharePoint framework, and I'm looking at it from a design perspective. I've been a SharePoint designer now for about 10 years. I started off with 2003. I moved all the way up until the current release of SharePoint in Office 365 with the new experience. So I'm going to take you through that journey as a SharePoint designer, and I'm also going to go through a quick demo of how to set up a new SharePoint framework project for application customizer to show you how we can customize the look and feel of the new modern SharePoint sites. So to begin with, I'll just give you a quick preview of what we're going to look at and what we're going to aim to create in this session today. So I've got one already created here. So as you can see, this is a new modern page. It's a new modern document library, but across the top here we've got a header area, and we've got some links on here that I've added, and we've also got a logo and some colouring, and at the bottom of the page we've got a footer area that can also be populated. So these are the two areas that Microsoft have put on the site that they allow you to customize and edit on every page without them interfering. So this is a great place where you could add extra functionality. Today I'm just going to look at it from a simple perspective of adding some custom design to the page. So I'm Tony Phillips. I'm a SharePoint designer and consultant, and I've been doing this for over 10 years. I started off originally with SharePoint 2003, and I've been applying custom designs since then through all the versions, and I never thought, over 10 years ago I would still be doing it today. So those are my contact details on the screen. So my story so far, so this is the timeline of SharePoint and how it's developed over time, the different versions. So I joined this timeline with SharePoint Server 2003. So back then, I used some very primitive techniques to apply designs to sites. And over the years, SharePoint 2007 was a new version, new techniques, same with 2010, 2013, and then 2016 and onwards with the new experience. And you can see that across the bottom there are the different online services. You can see Office 365 came into play around 2012, and that's when things really started to change, and this new experience that we're seeing now, which is a completely different SharePoint to the versions we've had previously, that's where it started to evolve from that point. So I originally started off using WSS and SharePoint 2003. So I'm just going to go through the more complex customizations and designs methods that I used to use. There were some other ones available, but back in 2003 there wasn't a great deal of choice. I basically got Front Page out, Microsoft Front Page, which is sort of the older version of SharePoint Designer, but it was used just for making really bad websites. So I used to use Front Page and edit the page, the ASPX page in Front Page, and just add in some extra HTML and some CSS to the page to make it look different, make it not look like SharePoint. And you could wrap your HTML around those web part zones and apply some customization. So you could still do some pretty interesting designs, but you had to apply it to every single page. So you'd replace HTML of each page. If you made a mistake, you would absolutely corrupt and ruin that page. So it was very dangerous to use Microsoft Front Page back then. There was several times where I had to go back into browser cache to find pages that I had ruined using SharePoint Designer. And I had no idea what I was doing, and I don't think many people did back then. So then it came along the next version, which was SharePoint 2007, or MOS as it was known. And there was two really good improvements in terms of design. So there was themes, which was great for people who didn't have, who only had the standard version, they didn't have the publishing model. And with themes, you could apply CSS, so you could add some custom CSS to a page. CSS was very hard to use on MOS. It was very hard to use because the HTML was structured in an absolute nightmare way for you to go around and pick out those divs that you wanted to customize and that you wanted to hide. So it was extremely complicated CSS. You couldn't edit the HTML, and CSS wasn't supported exactly the same in each browser. So there was, several issues across different browsers, as there probably was with all web technologies back then, using CSS. So we had to, we could reuse these themes. So that was, a huge benefit. You could reuse them and you could copy them and make changes to them and make designs much quicker. And then we also had the option of master pages. So for the publishing model, we had master pages, and that gave us a huge amount of flexibility. We had this template, this wrapper. We could edit the HTML in it. We could include CSS, and we could also add some JavaScript in, which was really important back then because we could use things like jQuery to fix cross-browser issues, or at least some of them. And we could use SharePoint Designer. So SharePoint Designer came out then. It replaced Microsoft Front Page, and it had some nice preview tools in there, so you could preview what your master pages look like. You could work inside that tool to add your CSS, and it was quite a nice HTML and CSS editor. It wasn't bad at the time, so you could create these custom designs, but again the HTML was very hard to use. It was poorly structured, so you did struggle to actually get it to look perfect. Another advantage of using master pages is we could actually deploy them via farm features, so we could package those up and redeploy them, and again it was much easier to quickly apply those designs to the sites. So like I said, it was very hard to work with. There was fantastic cheat sheets by Heather Solomon, which I used religiously just to find my way around that HTML structure and apply styles to the page. So we then moved, it didn't upgrade to SharePoint as well. So when the next version of SharePoint came out, you had to redo the master page before you could upgrade the site. So SharePoint 2010, big improvements again, but they kept the master page model. Themes seemed to disappear. There was a few replacements for it, which I never really used myself. So the big thing was master pages. They were better structured HTML, so it's much easier to pick out those divs and add your designs. It still isn't quite there, or still pretty messed up as well, but it was much easier. Again, it didn't upgrade to the next version of SharePoint. You had to create your master page again. There's a couple of other improvements as well though. So XSLT you could use to customize the look of lists. So instead of lists being out of the box, the announcement list was pretty basic. You could apply some design over the top of that using XSLT on those out of the box web parts. It was very hard to work with and very difficult to debug. If you made a mistake, it would just crash the web parts. But it was a great start because we could actually make the web parts look great, and again take them out of that SharePoint out of the box look and feel. And you could also include your jQuery. You could add some slideshows in there as well using some of the jQuery libraries. Again, it was another big improvement. And we also had JSON and the REST API, so we could use content editor web parts to add some different features onto a page, maybe pull in the profile picture and some of the social aspects of it onto a web part. So that really was where I suppose the first sort of SharePoint framework sort of technology came from, was those original content editor web parts where people just throw on JavaScript and CSS and HTML in an uncontrolled way, but it gave great results. You could really customize SharePoint to make it look great. So then came along 2013. So Microsoft sort of changed their tone really. They didn't want you to customize the look and feel of it using master pages. They recommended against that as best practice, and the reason for that is Office 365 was out. They were updating the master page on a more regular basis, and they wanted more flexibility with that. They didn't want people making a copy of the master page and then changing it themselves. If people did change it themselves, that had the problem of once you had changed the master page, you made a copy of it, that was no longer being updated by Microsoft, so you weren't getting the latest features, and eventually your site will be out of date by using that copy of the master page. So the alternative was to use custom actions, which was a great idea because we could deploy them via PowerShell. We could inject JavaScript onto the page and change the HTML DOM. It was pretty easy to, if you need to upgrade versions, you've just got a small JavaScript file that you can update rather than having to mess about with a master page. And again, we can insert CSS and everything else using that. So JavaScript then became the main tool for customizing SharePoint using the custom actions. And the alternative to XSLT was JS-Link, which again, we could make lists look great, make them look completely different to what they look like out of the box. And it was very simple to do, the same technology being used, just JavaScript everywhere. And it was much nicer experience for designers, really quick to copy and paste some of those JS links and then make changes to them and customize them per customer. So it's a very quick thing to use, and you could store up a library of them as well. You could also make use of the framework such as Angular. It's very quick to apply. And once we upgraded to SharePoint 2016, all of that still worked. So custom actions still worked, so you might need to make a few adjustments to it. The JS link still worked. That all worked until the new experience came out. So this wasn't dependent on a SharePoint version, it was just a release, and it's going to be a feature pack of the on-premise sites. But it was upgraded in some of the document libraries first inside Office 365, and then some of the modern pages started to come out as the default pages. So again, we're left with this page that we can't customize, and thankfully now there's an option to do that, and that's what we're going to go through today. So that's customizing the new experience. So the new experience can't be customized using the SharePoint framework at the moment. It's still in preview, but this is hopefully going to be released towards the end of this year, probably November sort of time. And what we use is something called application customizers. So there's several different types of extensions you can create using the SharePoint framework, and this is one of them. And this really is replacing our custom actions. It applies to every site and every page in that site. So when you do create these application customizers, you've got a header area at the top, a footer area at the bottom, and Microsoft have protected that as your area that you can put all that customization into without them changing the name of those divs. And we can also use web parts as well, so we can use a SharePoint framework to create web parts. But the big difference is that all of this is using completely different technology to what we used before. So although it is a different language, it's very similar to JavaScript. So TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. It compiles down to JavaScript, makes your JavaScript nice and tidy, and also makes it follow best practices, which you probably might not do if you write it in pure JavaScript. And it's the same with CSS. We write it in SAS, SCSS, and that again compiles down into CSS. And hopefully again that makes your life a bit easier. It's just from a slightly higher level, and we'll go through that in the example. So now I'm going to go through a demo of creating it using the SharePoint framework. I'm not going to go through setting up the whole environment for that, but I will point you in the right direction so you can get started on that. And I've done another video on how to get started with the SharePoint framework. So before we start, you want to make sure that you go to the dev site, the Office dev site, look at the documentation for the SharePoint framework that I've got on the screen now. So you want to make sure that you've got a developer tenancy. So there's instructions on here how to set that up and how to sign up for one, which is free. The reason for that is the SharePoint framework extensions will only work in developer tenancies, so you need to make sure that you have one of those to test this out. And then the other bit you need to do is also set up your development environment. So there's some really fantastic documentation on here. It takes you through step by step everything you need to install and set up. Things like Node.js, Visual Studio Code, all the different installers you need like Yeoman and Gulp. And once you've got all those set up, we can then start. So once you've got those set up, we can go to our command line and we can start creating our project. So you want to be in the Node.js command prompt. So that's what I've got open up on the screen at the moment. So the first command I'm going to run is I'm going to create a new folder. So MD, and we're going to call it SharePoint Design Test. And then I'm going to open up that folder. So once I'm inside that folder, I can then create my new project. So I'm going to run yo at Microsoft/SharePoint. and this will run the Yeoman scaffolding. It'll create a new project for me. As it creates this, it'll then prompt me to what sort of project I want to set up. So it's asking me for a solution name. I'm just going to press return, use the default one. I'm going to use an extension which is in preview rather than the web parts. This is the extension that we're creating. So I'm going to pick extension, then ask me what type of extension I want to do. So there's a number of different options on here. Got the field customizer, which I suppose is replacing JS Link. We're going to be using the application customizer, and this again is replacing the custom actions. It's going to apply to every page on the site. So I'm going to select that, and then I can give it a name. So I'll call it SharePoint Design Test. And then I'm just going to leave the description as standard. And this will take a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes to set up. So I'll leave that running. You can go make a drink, and then it should be ready for you. It should all be ready and set up once you've done that. I'm going to cancel that and go to one that I set up earlier. So you should that should scroll down. You have a few warnings in there. As long as you don't have any red error messages, then you should be fine. And then you'll have your project created. So this folder that I'm in at the moment is the one that I created earlier. So I've just run that command. It's created a brand new project for me. And to open that folder in Visual Studio Code, I just type in code space period, press return, and that opens up that entire folder structure inside that folder up in Visual Studio Code. So now we've got a new project set up. We only really need to edit 2 files to really test this and to create our preview project. So if we expand out src and then extensions, and then there should be the name of your project here. So we called this one SharePoint Design, and there's a couple of files in here. If I just make this a bit bigger. So we've got the TS file, which is this file here is the TypeScript file. Now if I open this up, we can see this is sort of standard out of the box SharePoint extension for an application customizer. It's your Hello World web part that doesn't say Hello World, but we can make it say that. So once we've got this set up, we can actually test it, and we can try and run it from our local machine and just try it out on our live page. So to do that, when we're inside this folder in our command prompt, if we type in gulp serve, so I've just skipped forward, and that's now running. You can see that's successfully serving from my local machine. So although we're going to test it on the live site, the actual code is hosted on our local machine. So when we actually open up our dev site, so I've opened up this normal modern experience document library, and what we need to do now is to actually append an extension to that URL. So we need to put in a query for that URL. Basically what we're doing is we're telling SharePoint to load the SharePoint framework on this particular page, so it looks on our local machine for the right code. So what we do is we just to test it, we're going to copy that. I'm going to put that inside Notepad, and we need to replace this GUID here with the one from our JSON, our manifest file. So if I go back to Visual Studio Code, open up manifest.json, we've got the ID here. So I'm just going to copy this ID, and this is the ID that we are going to use inside that URL. So what we do is we grab that full URL that we've got now, and we go back to our test page on our dev site, paste that in at the end. It then should look on our local machine and prompt us to load the debug scripts. So I'm just going to press load debug scripts, and we can say hello. We've got our Hello World application customizer working now. So it's bringing that hello through from the variable that we've passed through in that URL. So that's great. That's created our first custom action or application customizer that applies to the whole site. The next thing we need to do is to edit this header and footer area that we've got hidden on these pages. So to get the page header and footer placeholders so we can actually apply some content onto them, what I've done is I followed the using page placeholders guide on the Dev Center. So if you go through that tutorial, that will show you how to add all the functions that I'm going to show you in a minute. What I'll do is I'll talk you through those functions and what they mean, and then we'll actually get stuck in and actually apply some design to that page. So I follow those instructions. It's not a huge page of instructions to follow. There's a few changes we have to make, and we're adding a CSS file as well to the project. So the first changes I've made to this file is I've added the placeholder to the imports, and I've also included my custom CSS, and I've escaped the properties of the application customizer. So including this SAS file, if you look here, I've actually got that here in the project as well. So I've just created a new file for that, and that's got my CSS, and that's going to apply to the header and footer. And we'll have a look at changing that a bit later on. So in addition to that, we've also changed the export interface. So instead of having the text on there, we've added a header and a footer variable, which are both strings. And then down here under the main class, we've got two variables, again for the header content and the footer content. And then the only other real change we've made is we've replaced the onRender function with this custom function. So the first bit is we try and attach that page header area. The second if function there just checks see if it exists. If it doesn't, then the page header is not found, and that just writes an error to the browser console. And then after that, we've got some properties that we're reading in, and these properties we're going to actually include in that URL that we were using previously with some variables in it. So that's going to include the header string, and then we do exactly the same thing for the footer as well. So we've got a bit of HTML in here that we're going to print out, but as you can see, we've got this string, and that's what we're going to include in the URL when we're loading the page. Obviously we can change how that works a bit later on. So the next thing to do is to test it, to test the page and see the header and footer working. So we're going to make a slight change to that URL that we're appending at the end of the page URL. So it's all pretty much the same except when we get to the properties. Previously was passing across that test message that appeared in the alert box. This time we're passing through the header and the footer variable, which we reference inside the HTML. So I'm going to copy that. So I'm going to open up the modern page, paste in that URL, and then hopefully those variables will be passed through and appear on the page. So we've got header area of the page here and footer area of the page at the bottom. And if I go into here and I change this to, this is the header, and this is the footer, and then copy and paste that, add it to the end of the URL again, we should see it picks up those variables. And at the top of the page, we've got this is the header, this is the footer. So that's how we can pass through some properties while we're testing it. Obviously, you could hard code those in your TypeScript as well if you wanted to. So how do we create and construct our HTML that appears in that footer and header area? So if we go back into the main TypeScript file, you'll see under the footer if statement near at the bottom of the page, we can see we've got these divs, and we've also got that escape string, the footer string that is passed through the URL. Now what we could do is we could just edit this. So I could turn this into maybe a copyright line. So I have copyright 2017 Tony Phillips. Save that, and then if we go back into our page and just refresh that, you'll see that the HTML has changed at the bottom of that page. So we can do exactly the same thing for the footer as well. So the footer HTML, you can see it's quite clear here where you can see the divs placed. We can see that this actually is set in the inner HTML of that div, so very similar to what we'll do in JavaScript. TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, so it basically compiles everything to JavaScript. So you can even put JavaScript in here. So you see that some of the syntax is very similar to the JavaScript that you're familiar with. So again, in here I could get rid of that string that we're sending through, change it to hello world, and then go back into here. And now we've done that, we don't actually need to send those properties through in the URL anymore, because we've just got them hard-coded in here. So how do we change the style of it? So we've looked at the HTML, and again, we can construct our HTML in here, put our divs, any sort of HTML you want to do inside those areas here, and inserting it into the DOM elements. So the CSS is stored inside this Sass file here, SCSS. So like I said, it's actually a superset of CSS as well, called Sass, and it's very similar to CSS. You can put your standard CSS in here if you wanted to, but the main difference is this compiles down into CSS. So in this example here, we've got the app class, and inside that app class we've actually got the header class and the footer class written. And if you want to see what that actually compiles to, if you go into the library and open that up, you'll see that because the header is inside that app class, it actually compiles it as that, and that will apply to only that div that's inside that div. So it's actually a much quicker and cleaner way of writing your CSS, and hopefully makes it a bit speedier as well. And as you can see, it actually appends automatically a random class to the end of it. So when we're defining any classes inside this Sass file, instead of putting the actual class in here, what we do is we put in the style dot and the name of the class, and that will automatically pick up whatever that header name is that they've appended it to. And that's just so you don't get clashes on the page with any other projects, any other web parts that have been deployed. You'll have that random string at the end of all of your styles automatically, and you don't need to remember that random string because this will generate it automatically. So if I want to change the style of this header, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of those default classes, so we're just using the CSS that we can see inside here. So what I could do is I could change the background color, change it to green, and save that, refresh the page. And we can see that our CSS is applying to this header area. So we can go ahead and you can make as many changes as you want to this, and it's you can make it very similar to the customizations we could do before using CSS and HTML and JavaScript. So now I could put a background image in there, refresh that page, and we should have that probably repeated background image across the top. So now I could again add more CSS to this. So if I just copy and paste some CSS I made earlier, so what we've done is we've added a logo, we've changed the background color, and you can see from the flexibility we've got there, we can completely change the look and feel of this page. So technically you could also style areas outside of the header and the footer area. So we could actually style the rest of the page, but obviously that's not going to be completely supported by Microsoft, as they might decide to change the name of those divs and how they work, and they're outside of our control because they're outside of that header and footer area. So be advised against, but technically you could pick out some of those areas using a different CSS file. So I hope you found that a useful introduction into the SharePoint framework. Feel free to check out some of the other videos that go through it from a much more basic level, just creating a brand new project from scratch and setting up your development environment. But hopefully that's given you a good idea of what you can do with application customizers, how you could use them to design SharePoint and give it a unique look and feel outside of the available themes that you have already. And there's also lots of potential there to do even more exciting things. Rather than just changing the look and feel, we could do things like import information using the REST API and eventually the Microsoft Graph. So you could have a really interesting banner across the top, and it could include all sorts of things. It could be alerts from webhooks that you've set up on document libraries. It could be bringing in a global menu from a SharePoint list. It could be bringing in profile information about that person. So there's lots of potential, what you could use this for to, completely customize every single page in SharePoint and make it look great. So I hope you found that useful. And please feel free to check out the website. We offer SharePoint design, development, consultancy, training and support. So feel free to check out the company website, clouddesignbox.co.uk, or my personal blog, www.tonyishere.co.uk.